what I can cover for you guys here, I'll just address those issues to start with. That's what we'll cover. And really, I want to just talk about surface design for a few minutes. Does that sound like where you would like to start? Is just talking about surface creation, some of the options and some of the settings to answer your questions. Does that sound like a good starting place?
Yes, it is. And in addition, I have an additional information. They are also negotiating a total station with us.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think this will work well for everything you're trying to do right there. So feel free to stop me if I'm not coming across clearly right here. But let me show you probably two ways to start a project and answer some of your questions along here with what can be done. Because there's two ways to approach really the surface creation, and I think both are very important for what you're doing. So we want to start with one on if you create or gather points. So if you gather scan points or total station points or survey points from equipment, and you shoot and gather multiple survey points, you want to bring those points in and create a surface. So the first way you can do this, I'm running Business Center HCE version. This is 3.72. It came out last week. It's the new version. You can always tell where things are by using the Support tab and About or License Manager. Either one will get you the information. But you can see if I hit About, it's 3.72, and it's the current version. But let's go through option one, and let me import a set of points. And the way I will get there is I have a set of points right here on my desktop. This can be done from a total station. It can be done from GPS, however you want to do it. You got a couple of ways to import data. You can either go to Project and Import, or I just take a set of points and drop them inside of Business Center. And when I drop them in, it's going to give me a few options associated with this. Okay, here it is. So what are these points? You see an example at the bottom of these are point numbers. These have a northing, easting, and elevation and description. So you would find the same configuration up here. We have many configurations to pick from, lots of them, but this will be a point number, northing, easting, elevation, and we can import. And it will give us our starting, northing, and easting. And you see that you can import points, whether it was a few dozen or hundreds and hundreds of points, you can import these. Every point that you bring in from GPS or survey or robotic, if you click on a point, every point has a property. If I right-click, you will see what the properties are. They have a northing, they have an easting, they have an elevation. Every point, it has the description. So this could be brought in from the customer and from their survey solution. Or it could be brought in from an engineering or a separate surveyor. However the data is collected, you could bring that data in. Now that we've got it, what do we want to do with it? Well, most of the information that you're requesting would be under the Surface tab. If we look under the Surface tab, we can see this data. I want to create a surface. What will we want to name this? We'll call it Existing Surface. What color would I like my surface to be? I can create a surface. What members do I want? Well, I want everything on my screen, but you can select by layer, by name, any way you would like to select. You've got multiple ways to select what data you would like. We'll say OK to that, and it will build a surface out of everything that has elevations associated with it. So every one of these points has elevation. That created a simple surface. You can also see this data in 3D view at the same time. So we'll split my screen. Here's my plan view. Here's the 3D view. And you can move it around to see how this information looks. And it also shows me if I have any errors in my data. right here, I can see I've got one point that must be very, very low on my job site right there. So we would want to figure out how to find that point and where it's located and what we need to do with that particular set of information, which is down here. So if we zoom in, we can find out this point. Let's check the properties on that point. And see, it has a very small elevation versus everything else. Everything else has an elevation in the 5,000s. So that particular point had an incorrect elevation right there. So we may need to edit that elevation or delete that point. However we would like to do it. It depends on how you want to manage your surface. So if I pull those 2 points out, now we have a clean 3D surface. So we can modify the elevation or change it. Once we have a surface created, there's a couple of things we can do with it right here. And one would be to generate contours. So we can create contours on this job site as well. Let's put them at an interval of 1, and let's create a layer. And I'm doing all this from the very beginning just so you can see how this works. Pick a color for the contours as well. And we'll say OK to that. And you can see that it quickly generates a set of contours on that surface. So this is from taking a set of points, just taking a set of points. We import the points. We can look for high points or low points, and we can generate that 3D surface, and we can also create contours from it. The next thing on this same surface here is I can check the properties. The properties that exist within the surface, there's multiple settings that you can have, and this shows you all the settings on this. So you could come in and look at the color associated with this surface. Maybe you want to show the arrows associated with it. And I can show this from my plan view or 3D view, and you can see how water is draining on this site. So if you see these arrows, that's showing you which way this site would go and drain. Is that the correct information? Is that the way you want the site to drain, yes or no? You get to see that information right here associated with your site. You can also shade your site based on an elevation range as well, and you can see high versus low on your elevation colors. Just multiple settings and multiple choices associated with a site. But the big thing when we're starting from the very beginning is we can import a set of points. We can verify the information high and low. We can use our surface to create a surface off of this, and then we can generate contours. And that's one set of information. And what I'd like to do now is change over and show you if you received a set of contours from an engineering source or a CAD source or anywhere else, how you could convert those contours into a 3D set of contours for a job site. So far so good? Does this help on the front end? Are we going in the right direction for you?
Yes, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Maybe planned for you in the few minutes, but is it possible to use Business Center HCE to calculate the number of manholes required to drain some area?
No, it would not do the engineering side on that to calculate the number of manholes, but I mean, you could, if you had a engineering schematic of a set of pipes or utility information and you wanted to verify it or check it or see it, you could do any of that type of information. But there's not a, you could see your high points and your low points on your site, but you would need some engineering tools to make sure that you build the right sewer design or manhole system. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. All right, that's step one right here. Let's change over now, and I want to do a new job. I want to start a brand new file. And here's a blank one. Now what I want to do this time is I'm going to drag over a set of contours here. So bear with me. Let me grab a set of these. And this time I have a DXF file, and you can just drag and drop that DXF. And it imports the data directly into Business Center. So I can either go to Project and Import or drag and drop. Now when I first bring this data in, it looks like an accurate set of contours. Everything looks good. These look like they're labeled. The contours look good. So let me click on one of these and right-click and check the properties. And we'll see that here's the critical part of this process, is you bring in the data, it looks correct, but various engineers do data differently. Even though it looks correct, there is no elevation on this line. It's labeled, but it's just a 2D line. If I click another line, it is two-dimensional. If I click another line, it is two-dimensional. So now here's the power within Business Center for a surface design and surface creation. We want to turn this into an accurate 3D surface, but at the moment we don't know if there's any 3D data. It looks good, but it's just labeled good. The data doesn't have the elevations. So there's several tools within Business Center. Here's the critical tools for building and designing a site. If I look at my display options, I want to take anything that does not have elevation and show it in an alternate color. So let me come in and say display an alternate color, and everything turns purple, meaning there are no elevations on this job site. So now the game plan is to turn the 2D job into a 3D job. That's what needs to be done on this site, is we need to turn the 2D information into a 3D information. So how do we go and do that within Business Center? Well, all the tools that we need are under the Data Prep menu. Under Data Prep, I can come in and I can have multiple ways, 8 or 9 ways to elevate lines. One is contours by label. Which contours do I want to do? I'm going to pick contours by layer, and I pick the labels and the lines. So I pick the text and this line. Now understand again, let me pause right here, everything on my screen is two-dimensional. I don't have any elevation, but we have commands in Business Center to say take pieces of text, take contour lines, and read the text and assign the text to the line and create it into 3D. When I apply this, it takes my entire job site and it elevated over 100 contours for me, and it gives them the elevation of that text. So we went from a 2D file, and now we have an elevation of 1100. So what we have done is we have converted two-dimensional data into three-dimensional data with our data prep command. Does that concept make sense so far?
Yes.
Great. Fantastic. Okay, that's part of them. But now we have all the rest of the contours. So just to show what we have done, I will open up a 3D view as well. I'm going to split the screen and show what we just did. So in the data prep command, what we have just done is we turned out of this entire 2D site that was down here, we ran a command and elevated part of the data. How do we elevate the rest of the data? We have other commands by crossing. I am going to start, and as long as I have, let me turn off, let me turn off a setting here. I've got a new version. So I'm going to start right here and just slice a line, and you see that it reads the elevations of the known contours, the ones that were green. It reads those, and it assigns the elevation to everything else, and we just elevated 38 contours automatically. So we'll do that a few times right here. I'll click another line, and you see just by clicking and snapping, we can turn 2D data into 3D data very, very quickly. Does the concept make sense so far?
So far, so good.
Great. So now we have turned 2D data into 3D data. So this data up top is all 3D. This is data that is still 2D. And I'm just going to get rid of the other data just to show the process here. Now we have a set of 3D contour lines, but we don't have a surface yet. We just have contour lines. So let's go through and build a surface. I'm going to create a surface. We'll call it existing. I can give it a color. What members do I want to add? I'll just select by window and pick this data and say OK. And it will go through and create our 3D surface. Now you see that we have built it. And editing is a key part of this whole process. If you see a flag, it means somewhere data crosses over and that data needs to be cleaned up or edited. So if I can get rid of certain data, I can remove flags off a surface. I can also, if we zoom out, you see that there's work taking place outside of where we may work. We can clean that up. I can trim my surface edges, and you can get rid of outside triangles, and it cleans that data up automatically for you right there. Once I've got the surface the way I want it, we can go in and we can create a surface boundary line right here. I want to create a surface boundary, and I'm going to put it on a layer name called Edge. And say OK, and it creates a surface edge line for me automatically. So that wraps a line. Now I have a tight boundary associated with my job site. Now a couple of things. We can go back and see exactly what we did before, but you can also look in, again, here's some fine details on the surface editing within Business Center. If you zoom in from a 2D and a 3D, sometimes you have areas that are flat. You see these are flat triangles right here. It didn't do anything wrong. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's taking the closest information and connecting it. But if we click this surface and check the properties, there are a couple of things we can go and do. One is we can adjust these flat triangles, and it will go through and automatically clean up this surface to make it nice and smooth, and that's calculated for machine control applications and for 3D volume calculations, is we can go create a very smooth surface out on my job site. We can also shade this area. If I check my surface and I go into my properties, maybe you want to be concerned about areas that are between 0 and 5% slope. And if you do that, it will highlight and only show me the areas that are between 0 and 5%. Sometimes people need to know the areas between 0 and 1% that are not grading correctly for water flow analysis. Sometimes people need sites that are over a 45% slope so that they know in those particular areas we need to go back and put retaining walls or other information. So this lets you see that calculation and information. So I'll turn that off again. I'll turn off those properties. And let's do a couple of more surface features for you here. You can show those triangles again. You can show the arrows for my slope analysis. I can also turn it off from a plan view. I still have it in both views, but I have turned off the surface. It's still here, but we just turned off the visibility. Let's talk about volume analysis for just a minute that I think is critical in this process. Is I can come in and I can create a CAD. Let me just create a something very simple. I'll come in here and create a rectangle, and I will name this a building pad and give it a color. And what elevation do I want? I'll pick something about the middle of my job here. So let's go 1050. And where do I want to create this building pad? I'll just create a very simple pad right here. Now that I've got it, what are my other choices? We have the surface tools where we can come in and we can tie together information. So what we want to do is create a surface tie. I want to take this line, I want to tie it to my existing surface, and I want to tie it on the outside, and I will put a cut slope of a 3 to 1 and a fill slope of a 4 to 1, and we will apply that. And it will drape for me and show me how these two surfaces interact. So if I'm trying to build buildings or a site, it could be a road. How does this information tie to each other? So we've now created some tie slopes showing how these two surfaces interact. One more feature that's very, very powerful on here is I could move this item. And I will show you when we move it just how powerful. This is one of the most powerful parts of Business Center to show this dynamically. If I click on my site and move this pad, we see how these surfaces interact with each other. Do you see that information? Is that making sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Very, very powerful tools right there. Once we have that where we want it, if that's the final information, I can create another surface. And this surface we will call pad. What do I want? I want the line and the side slope to form a pad. We will say OK to that. Now we have a secondary surface. So we have two surfaces. We can even take these two surfaces and we can slice between the two if we wanted to. And I can slice between surface 1 and surface 2, and you can see that information and how those interact. So you see both surfaces, how they interact. We can also take it and run volumes on this very quickly. I could come in and do an earthwork report, and I want to go from my existing to my pad, and let's hit OK. And it will take my existing surface and this pad surface, and it will go through and run all my calculations to show me how much cut material, how much fill material, how much import or export material. So far, so good?
So far, so good.
Great. And let's finish this up with just one or two more thoughts associated with it. Now that we have two surfaces, we can go through and create another one. We could create a final surface, and I will make my existing tie to my pad, and we'll say OK, and it will create a final surface. So if we turn off the other two surfaces, what we end up with is one final pad that we can see and how this looks from 3D. So you can see it from either view, and we can turn off some of those settings as well. We can come in here to our properties, and from our plan view, we can start to turn things off. And from my 3D view, I want to turn off some information. And when we do that, we get a very accurate surface of what that looks like. And that is the final surface associated with this, which we could turn around and generate a new set of contours if we wanted to. But that walks through the process of starting from the beginning, from taking a 2D set of information, whether it's lines or points, taking 2D information, we can generate a surface using our create surface command. We can use our data prep commands to turn our 2D data into 3D data to make sure we have accurate information on our screen. Once we've done all of that, we can generate new contours, we can generate pads, we can generate volumes, and walk through that whole process to create an accurate 3D surface. We could drop other information on top of this surface, or we can import this surface or export this surface to other CAD programs and machine control files as well. But it gives us a view to know exactly what's going on and getting the most accurate view we can of our construction site.